So picture this scenario, right? You are an elite, like highly analytical professional. You are basically the smartest person in the room.
Oh, absolutely. The one everyone relies on.
Right. Your title says you're a leader. Your track record completely proves you're at the top of your game. And you really pride yourself on being perfectly rational.
Yeah.
But then, last night, you had a serious argument with your spouse.
Oh, man, we all know the drill. You spend the entire rest of the night just staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation on a loop.
Exactly. You toss and turn, you find new angles, you dream up these new counter-arguments. You're just quietly justifying to the dark room why you were entirely in the right.
Yeah, winning an argument with nobody.
Right. And then morning comes. The argument is technically over, but it is completely unfinished in your mind. You're absolutely exhausted. But it's 9:20 a.m., and you have this massive presentation to a client you have been pursuing for months.
So you just default to the training. You do what every high performer is taught to do, which is...
You put on your armor.
Exactly. You put on the armor.
You sit down at your desk, you take your personal life, and you just shove it into this mental lockbox. You push down the fatigue, you mute that like low-grade anxiety humming in the pit of your stomach.
Just lock it all away.
You tell yourself to be professional, be composed, be functional, execute. And you actually do it. It's the ultimate modern survival tactic. But what if I told you that tactic is biologically impossible?
I mean, it's a really fascinating premise, and it completely dismantles a core assumption we all make in the corporate world.
It really does. So we are diving into a brilliant piece of writing today from Freeland Leal's newsletter. Specifically, it's edition number 7, titled, "The Most Successful Person in the Room Might Be the Most Suppressed."
It's such a great title.
It is. And the mission for this deep dive is to figure out why trying to compartmentalize your personal life from your professional life, like, structurally fails, and how your internal biological state dictates your success before you even walk through the office door. Okay, let's unpack this, because analytical professionals are essentially trained from business school onward to treat themselves like machines, right?
Oh, 100%. The message is always to leave your baggage at the door.
Right. Just be a blank slate of pure logic.
Yeah, the expectation is that you can function like a software program. But Liao introduces this metaphor that just perfectly captures why this fails. So your mind tries to split your life into neat, isolated columns on a spreadsheet, but your nervous system operates on a single ledger.
The spreadsheet mind versus the single ledger nervous system. That is such a vivid way to look at it.
It really is. I mean, think about how a spreadsheet is actually built. If you were building a financial model, you can format a single cell to hide its contents. You know, you can change the font color to white, or
you can shrink the row down to 0 pixels so nobody looking at the screen even knows it is there.
Exactly. But if that hidden cell contains a fundamentally broken number and it feeds into the main equation, it ruins the formula for the entire sheet.
Wow. Yeah.
Your nervous system does not care about your mental formatting. It doesn't care that you labeled the argument with your spouse personal and the 9 a.m. pitch professional. It just keeps one single running tally of all the physical and emotional pressure you are experiencing.
It makes me think about a computer struggling to run a massive program. What you're describing is like trying to run complex financial modeling software on a machine where the RAM is just completely fried because there are 50 background processes silently running under the name argument with spouse.
Yes, that is exactly it.
You hide the windows so your desktop looks super clean, but the whole system is lagging and overheating.
And that overheating is the exact structural flaw of suppression. Externally, you know, that presentation you gave at 9 a.m. might look flawless. The slides were crisp. You hit all your talking points.
You nailed the pitch.
You nailed it. But internally, your system is running on immense suppressed pressure to maintain that facade. And that internal pressure actively sabotages your cognitive performance, regardless of how good your outward poker face is.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here, though. If I am in that pitch and my Excel model is perfect and the data proves my point, doesn't the client just care about the math? Like, if my logic is sound, why does it matter if I'm secretly stressed out? Aren't we compensated specifically for our ability to push through and deliver the data anyway?
I mean, on the surface, that makes total sense. We assume the data speaks for itself. But humans do not buy raw data. They buy the conviction, the vision, and the trust behind the data. And this is where we move out of metaphor and into hard science.
Okay, lay it on me.
Chronic stress, even when perfectly masked, physically alters the prefrontal cortex.
And the prefrontal cortex is basically the CEO of the brain. It's the center of everything you desperately need in a high-stakes negotiation.
Right. It governs complex decision-making, working memory, emotional regulation, and creative problem solving. So when you are suppressing the physiological fallout of that fight from the night before, your body is just flooded with cortisol and adrenaline.
Your body thinks it's under attack.
Exactly. Your nervous system logs a threat. And when a threat is detected, the brain literally shifts metabolic resources away from the prefrontal cortex and sends them to the amygdala, which is the survival center.
So you are physically operating with less cognitive bandwidth. The piece points out exactly what this looks like in a boardroom, too. It says this pressure narrows your thinking, it shortens your patience, it tightens your creativity. And what I found incredibly revealing is how it changes your leadership style.
Oh, the leadership shift is huge.
It defaults your leadership toward control instead of vision.
Well, consider the biological mechanism there. When your prefrontal cortex is under-resourced, your brain is in survival mode. And a survival brain does not look for expansive, visionary, out-of-the-box partnership.
No, it just wants to survive the meeting.
Right. A survival brain just wants to control the immediate environment and mitigate immediate risk. You start micromanaging the timeline, you get defensive when the client asks a challenging question, you push for a safe, mediocre close rather than an innovative one.
And it's not that you are consciously choosing to be narrow-minded. You literally cannot see the broader options. They just aren't biologically available to you in that moment.
Exactly. Your biological state filters the information you can access. Different decisions actually feel available to you depending on your physiology.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This completely flips the traditional business playbook on its head. In elite analytical fields, the gospel is that performance is purely about strategy. Get the right data, build the right deck, have the right credentials, and you win. But this shows that strategy is always filtered through your state first.
What's fascinating here is that the body converts unaddressed emotional pressure into a physical state. Your breathing becomes shallow, your muscle tension increases, your vocal cords actually tighten, which changes the pitch of your voice.
Wait, your voice actually changes?
Yes, your vocal cords tighten up. It is a measurable physiological reality, not just a bad mood.
Okay, so if the baseline state of a stressed executive is this narrowed, controlling panic, what is the biological opposite of that? Because the text brings up this concept of coherence. Is there a state where the brain is actually working with us instead of against us?
Oh, absolutely. Coherence is the biological antidote to that narrowed survival state. Scientists studying neurocardiology have actually mapped this out. Coherence happens when the rhythms of your heart, your respiratory system, and your brainwaves all operate in synchronization.
Okay, but what does that synchronization actually look like? How does the heart affect the brain's ability to think?
It comes down to heart rate variability, or HRV. When you are in a state of stress or frustration, your heart rhythm pattern is erratic and jagged.
Like static on a radio.
Exactly like static. This erratic signal travels up the vagus nerve to the thalamus, which essentially tells the brain, we are in danger, shut down higher reasoning. But when you are in a state of coherence, which you can cultivate through specific breathing and focus techniques, your heart rhythm pattern becomes smooth and ordered.
Static clears up.
The static clears up. This smooth signal tells the brain, we are safe. The prefrontal cortex fully comes online. Decision quality sharpens. Creative thinking expands exponentially.
And the body knows this instinctively. I mean, every listener out there has felt the difference between the day they walked into a room totally clear, energized, and coherent versus the day they walked in carrying the heavy baggage of an unresolved conflict.
It's a night and day difference.
It really is. Everything feels frictionless in the first scenario and like wading through wet concrete in the second.
And this physiological foundation is what makes a fascinating case study in Liao's piece possible to understand. There's a discussion about a man named Bob Proctor, who went from earning $4,000 a year to $175,000 in 12 months.
That is a staggering leap, 4,000 to 175,000. But the striking part wasn't the financial jump itself. It was the mechanism behind the leap. Proctor did not achieve this by suddenly learning a brand new magical business strategy. He didn't change the market conditions.
No, not at all. The formula mapped out for his success is identity dictates state, which dictates results. Proctor shifted his identity, which completely changed his internal baseline state. And because his state changed, entirely new possibilities became visible to him.
I want to pause on that because to a highly analytical listener, shifting your identity to get results can sound a little bit like generic self-help. Like, just make a vision board and you will be rich. How does someone practically shift their identity on a Tuesday morning? And how does that physically change their results?
It's a fair question, but it's rooted in neuroplasticity. Your identity is essentially a reinforced set of neural pathways about who you are and what you are capable of. If your deep-seated identity is, I am someone who constantly has to fight for survival and prove my worth, your nervous system is permanently tuned to detect threats.
So you're always in that survival mode.
Right. Your baseline state is that jagged, erratic heart rhythm. But Proctor engaged in deliberate practices to rewrite those neural pathways, changing his subconscious self-image to someone who naturally operates at a high level of abundance and ease.
So by rewiring his self-image, his nervous system no longer perceived his daily environment as a threat.
Exactly the opposite of a threat. Because he wasn't constantly suppressing survival panic, his biological baseline shifted into coherence. And when your prefrontal cortex is fully online all day, you suddenly see an opportunity for a partnership that you would have previously ignored.
You actually have the bandwidth for it.
Exactly. You have the bandwidth to navigate a complex negotiation without getting defensive. The new results are a natural byproduct of a brain that is functioning at its highest biological capacity.
This introduces a concept called energetic intelligence. We all know about IQ, and we all know about EQ, emotional intelligence. But energetic intelligence is the ability to recognize the internal biological state you are operating from and deliberately shift it rather than just being blindly driven by it.
Yes, it's conscious leadership.
Yes.
It is recognizing that your internal state never actually stays internal. It always broadcasts.
And this leads to a really bold assertion in the piece. It says, leadership is state transmission. Wait, so if I walk into a meeting completely out of coherence, exhausted, and trying to hide my stress under my professional armor, does my physical body practically trigger resistance in the room before I even open my mouth?
It absolutely does, and the mechanism for this is mirror neurons. Humans are biologically hardwired to read the nervous systems of other humans. We do it subconsciously to assess safety.
We're always scanning the room.
Always. When you walk into a room suppressing intense pressure, your client's brain is rapidly processing your microexpressions, your pupillary responses, the microtension in your jaw, and the slightly elevated rate of your breathing.
So their brain is reading the hidden cells on my spreadsheet.
Yes, perfect callback. Your words might be saying, this quarter's projections are incredibly strong, but your biology is broadcasting, I am under threat. Their mirror neurons pick up on that dissonance.
That is wild.
They will inexplicably feel a lack of trust. They might cross their arms, lean back, or start picking apart your data. They don't know why they feel uneasy. They just know their nervous system is responding to yours. All of this happens long before your intellectual strategy even enters the picture.
That is just wild. Your body affects the room before your pitch deck even loads on the screen. The client isn't rejecting the math. They're rejecting the state transmission of the person presenting the math.
Which brings us to the ultimate question, right? If energetic intelligence and achieving biological coherence is the goal, how do modern professionals actually get there? Because corporate North America is getting this entirely wrong.
Oh, we are seeing a massive clash of paradigms here. Let's look at the Western approach to nervous system regulation. We finally figured out that chronic stress is killing us, so what do executives do? They flood their calendars with wellness practices, the yoga, the meditation apps, the acupuncture, the ice baths. It is a massive billion-dollar industry.
But the flaw is that they are still using their spreadsheet brain to engage at these practices. They are applying a mechanical, functional mindset to a biological system. They treat meditation the way a mechanic treats a broken-down engine.
Yeah, the owl points out a perfect example of this. An executive uses a meditation app at 6:00 p.m. to try and repair the immense pressure and structural damage they created in their nervous system at 9:00 a.m.
It is pure damage control. It is entirely reactive. You are using a breathing exercise to put a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. But Eastern philosophies did not design these practices to be a quick relaxation tool after a brutal day of emotional depression. They designed them as tuning systems for the human machine.
I want to dig into that word tuning. What is the biological difference between relaxing and tuning?
Think about the vagus nerve, which is the main highway of your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system. When you use meditation just to relax, you are temporarily lowering your heart rate. But tuning is about increasing your vagal tone over time.
Building the muscle, essentially.
Right. A high vagal tone means your nervous system is highly resilient. It means you can face a massive client challenge at 9:00 a.m., and instead of your system spiking into survival mode and shutting down your prefrontal cortex, your system remains coherent.
So what does this all mean? It means we are looking at our daily habits completely backwards. We push our engines into the red zone all day, throwing black tape over the warning lights, and then we sit on a meditation cushion at night, hoping to magically undo the structural damage.
Yeah, it's totally backward.
We are using wellness to survive our suppression rather than using it to tune our baseline state so we do not have to suppress anything in the first place.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, if you do not tune the machine proactively, you are limiting your perception of reality. There is a reference to Pritchett's concept from his book U Squared, where he suggests that the brain functions like both a transmitter and a receiver.
A transmitter and a receiver, I love that.
The state you operate from determines what frequency you are tuned into. Perception is never neutral. You never see the world exactly as it objectively is. You see the world as your nervous system filters it.
That concept that your nervous system filters reality long before your mind ever reads the spreadsheet is profound.
Yeah.
If you do not tune the machine, if you do not cultivate energetic intelligence, you are literally blind to opportunities that are sitting right in front of you.
You won't even notice them.
Right. You miss the subtle signals in a negotiation. You play it safe so you don't lose, rather than playing with the vision required to win.
Because your biological receiver is locked onto the frequency of survival and control, you cannot pick up the broadcast for vision, creativity, and human connection when your dial is stuck on exhaustion.
Man, this has been such an incredible deep dive. It completely reframes the idea of what it means to be an elite professional. We started by looking at the exhausted executive trying to leave their personal life in a mental lockbox. And we have seen how the single ledger nervous system makes that structurally impossible.
It just doesn't work.
The pressure doesn't vanish. It forces your brain to shift resources away from the prefrontal cortex. It narrows your leadership into micromanagement, and through mirror neurons, it broadcasts resistance to everyone in the room.
And the antidote isn't a sharper business strategy, and it isn't using an ice bath as a band-aid. It is shifting your identity and deliberately turning your vagal tone to achieve coherence.
It all comes back to a powerful closing statement from Wheel and Layou's piece. A quiet mind is a profit multiplier. Your biggest bottleneck in business or in life is rarely a lack of intellect. You are already the smartest person in the room. The bottleneck is the invisible biological state that is running your machine.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who suspects their machine might be running on hidden pressure, there is a practical next step. Liao mentions a mind audit diagnostic tool designed to uncover those exact hidden internal patterns that are shaping your execution and driving your exhaustion.
It is a great resource to transition from just knowing about energetic intelligence to actively applying it to your own single ledger. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. It builds right on that fascinating idea from Pritchett about the brain being a biological transmitter and receiver.
Oh, that concept completely changes how you view your daily interactions.
It really does. So think about it this way. If your brain is a receiver and your internal biological state determines the exact frequency you are tuned into, the exact frequency you pick up, what massive life-changing opportunities, brilliant ideas, or pivotal connections are broadcasting all around you right now that you're completely missing, simply because your dial is stuck on the frequency of stress.